Hi, you're listening to the Flow State Fishing Podcast.
What do you mean?
There's fucking two Sheilas in a boat.
Listen to me. Every time.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Oh, yeah. Oh. Oh, yeah. Oh.
This fishing trip was to Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah, righto.
Chasing sailies. We were like right at the end of the season pretty much. And we booked, I think, what must have been the cheapest boat in the entire fleet there. Because it was a massive 12 metre bloody glass boat. Just this massive banana boat. And it had, I think, 240 horsepower 4-stroke Yammies on the back.
Fuck me.
It was flat out doing 15 knots. And you just watch all of these boats with 250 Hondas just blast past.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of chugging along. But I think it cost $100 each per day.
Yeah, right.
For the boat. And that was with a captain,
Fucking
a decky that was a translator so you could actually talk to the captain. And then the fellow who owned the boat actually came on the boat just to jig us bait. That's all he did was just bait jig with a squid jig, sinker style thing on the bottom.
Yeah.
And he'd just catch us liveys all day.
Fucking
Yeah.
hell. What, just what are you are you just pitching live baits at sighted fish, or what's the go?
Oh, well, it's I kind of think of it a bit like the, what we call silver sands in Innisfail, where it's like a breeding ground for spotty mackerel. And when they're really hot, you can see them free jumping and just going bananas.
Yeah.
It was exactly like that, but just sailfish. So you rock up to this area. It looks a bit like that island that you
talk
have
about
there.
the background on the Flow State studio.
Yeah, that big
rock
pinnacle. Yeah, rock pinnacle in Fiji. It looked like just this little blob out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And just all around there is just flat bottom, but I think bait schools must just hold up around there.
Like an upwelling or something, is it?
Yeah, I think it's a current that runs through there.
Yeah, righto.
They're just you can just see them free jumping. You can see the sails coming out of the water as they're sort of boarding up the bait fish and stuff. It was unreal. But the government protects sailfish because it's a tourism industry.
Thing. Yep.
But what they've done is they get all these palm fronds, stick them in I think it's a mesh or something, and they sink it on the bottom.
Yeah.
As the palm fronds rot, it attracts the bait fish in and they start eating
all the shit.
Yeah, so on the way out, they got these palm frond bait grounds that you stop at and you jig up all your liveys.
Yeah.
And they've got what you would see normally as a coral trout live well in a pro boat.
Yeah,
they've got that in the middle with the holes in the hull, so it's consistently getting fresh water, and it's this massive 200-litre live well that you just chuck all the liveys in.
Yeah, righto. Fuck.
And so you just head out to this island and just hook a unweighted live bait with just a circle hook and just throw it out, and you just drift with the current, and the sailors just come in.
And just on a free spool rig or something, or really drag or something like that, and you just
basic what you'd use to catch Spaniards, pretty much.
Righto.
Just 5,000 spin.
Yep.
Sort of 10 to 15 kilo,
Yep.
rod, nothing flash, and just free spool it out a bit so that it sits out the back. If you need to, put a float on it if you want to keep it up a bit, and just loosen the drag off, and then all of a sudden you just see it start to take off slowly, and you just tighten up the drag, and off she comes out of the water.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I'd like to try that off of here, eh?
Yeah, I've seen a few people do that. If they've found the bait grounds, they just sort of drift through with liveys.
Yeah,
just unweighted.
At the grounds in the north, that'd be good.
Yeah, northern grounds. Yeah,
go there and jig a heap of liveys, and then just sit there and drift, sink piss.
Be easy.
Be fucking epic.
Yeah, well, I guess if you're drifting too, I've tried it actually spot locking on top of the bait grounds when there was no other boats out there.
Yeah,
and I found. The bait tends to try and swim a bit deeper, so you end up with mac tuna touching you.
Fucking grubs.
So, I've had a crack at it, but I probably should have tried the drifting technique, I think. But we were just a bit slack that day, and I don't think it was really a good day to be out there. There was good bait, but just didn't mark anything up, and just mac tuna city.
It's touch and go, the billies off here, eh?
Yeah, we've had a couple pretty average years, actually. I think the last 2 years I've had a go at trying to catch them. I've raised a few, dropped a few, but haven't had any luck. I've actually had more luck off Innisfail.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, the grounds are closer there too. This cunt on his bike he's come past twice. Oh no, that's the hammer drill. I could hear it through the fucking through the headset. I saw this cunt on his bike's come past twice. It's a hammer drill. A bit of electrical work going on. Yeah, righto. But you had a few years ago there when I was in Darwin, you had a good season, eh?
Oh, it was ridiculous. I'd pretty much just come back from romping like the year before, and my mate who I went with, we were all jacked up on billies after that, you know, like we thought, oh, we can do it here.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Bowling Green grounds were known to be, you know, reasonably close, you know, you get pretty good numbers turning up, and so he knew a guy at the fish board in Innisfail and put in an order for like some fresh gars.
Yeah.
So I got some real nice fresh gars, and then he come down from Innisfail and we rigged them up at night, had them all ready to go. And I only had the Hornet at the time, actually. So
we're talking a 435 Hornet. I bought it off Brock when I first moved to Townsville before I went to Darwin. I've fucking done some miles that rig, eh?
It's probably still out there. It's probably got 10,000 hours.
I've seen it about a year or two before I moved back, so we're talking 2018, I reckon. 2017, 2018, I've seen it. Still with that same Yami on the back, the 40 carby model Yami.
I tell you what, that thing is a warhorse. if I got another tinny, I would want exactly that. It was like the perfect just little boat motor. It had pull start if you couldn't electric start, had trim and tilt. You know, easy to fix, easy to service.
You used to do like a good, comfy 40k an hour too.
Yeah.
Like that boat.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I mean,
and fuel economy was fucking stupid.
Oh, if you wring its neck out, it was still doing like 3 kilometres to the litre or something stupid like that.
Yeah, I used to go full Bicky in territory. I've had it, I took it because you can fit 2 20-litre jerrys in the back and then 3 or 4 jerrys in it. I've had it like 80, 90 Ks downstream from the ramp.
Wow.
Up there in the daily. Like in this little 435 camping in the cunt. It was awesome.
Far out. I think the wildest thing I did in that boat was out at Otter Reef off Cardwell, which is about 50 odd Ks. And I went there for Easter with my mate that I was just telling you about that we chased the billies with.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who lived there, and he went back home to Brizzy for the holidays, and he said, if you want to stay at my place, you can. So we went up there for Easter and went fishing. It was just like, you know, you couldn't have asked for better weather to take a Hornet out to the Great Barrier Reef. Yeah. And it was actually quite an interesting trip, that one, because we sort of bastardized the boat a bit, and he was actually loaning a iPilot off a mate, and it was like when iPilots had just come out, you know.
Yeah.
And he was like, my mate went overseas and he gave it to me to try it out. You want to put it on your boat when we go there? I said, yeah, righto. So we chucked this thing on, and that was like, I think I went and bought one like 3 weeks after that. I was just like, this is so good. I know, I don't even know how to anchor anymore now that I've got, you know, electric with spot lock functionality. But
no.
Yeah, I ended up spearing my first red emperor that day.
Out of a 435 Hornet.
Yeah, out of a 435 Hornet, 67 centimetre red out of, I think, 12 metres or something like that.
Fuck me dead.
And I had no gear and no idea. I had a 1 metre gun, no float line, no reel, nothing. And I just went down and I seen these 2 reds. And I come up and I said to my mate, who was much more experienced diver than I was, I said, there's a legal red down there. And he goes, don't shoot it. I said, no, I reckon it's legal. He goes, don't shoot it. It's not legal. I'm telling you now. I went, all right. Well, I went down.
65's legal, eh?
55.
55.
Yeah.
Yeah, righto.
Anyway, I saw it. I went, yeah, righto. And I followed it around for a bit. And then eventually got it in a position where it was sort of holed up on this beautiful big blue bommy. And there was a huge cave in it. And I saw there were 2 of them. One that was a fair bit smaller than him. And they went in the cave. And I went, okay, well, maybe I can just shoot it in the cave.
Yeah.
So I went down, had a look in the cave, and there was massive barramundi cod, a couple big trout, maybe a jack, I don't know. I didn't really know what I was looking at that point. Yeah. There's so many things that look like jacks in caves, and I couldn't see the red, so I was a bit disappointed. I come up on the surface and I said to him, I've lost the fish. And he's like, it's okay, we'll move on. And then I looked down and there it was. It come out of the cave and went up on top of the bommy, which is good because it was a bit less swim to get to him. And I shot him with the 1 metre gun, and because I think my rubbers were pretty flogged out, like I didn't have much power, it only just penetrated the gill plate, and the tip of the spear was like just smashed around in his gills. So obviously, a bit of blood in the water, and I shit myself. So I yelled out at him. I said, "Give me a gun. I need a second shot," because my gun was hanging mid-water with this red just smashing on the bottom, making a mess, blood and sand everywhere. And I went down with his gun, tried to put another holding shot into it, and I couldn't figure out the safety on it. So I just grabbed my gun and just pumped it up to the surface, and then gave him his gun back and brought it up, and he goes, "Oh, I don't know if that's legal." And then we put it on the tape, and he went, "Holy shit, 67 centimetres." So
112 over, 120 over, sorry.
Easy. So it was a amazing little trip out in a 435 Hornet, chasing Barra one day and then spearing Red Emperor the next.
Fucking hell. I done some miles in that cunt too. And held up pretty well. Like normally they crack pretty bad and stuff, those holes. I repaired a few minor ones, but nothing bad.
Well, before I sold it to you, I spent about $250 getting all of the ribs re-welded and gusseted, because it had been through some times. Like I'd taken it out in some weather that was definitely not.
You used to hit the islands in it fairly hard, eh?
Yeah, I used to go out quite a bit diving, because I lived with my cousin at the time, and him and I were just mad keen fishermen. We used to just drop of a hat go, and I've spent a lot of time at the islands diving, and I've got a pretty good understanding of those islands now, and I'd love to do a little bit more around palms, but I haven't really been able to access palms till I bought the hammerhead. So.
Yeah, right. And you've had that hammerhead for a while now too. 5
years, yeah. Just come out of warranty, the engine, so that's how I knew.
That's because they were pretty new when you chased them up, eh? They weren't really big yet.
No.
And now they're pretty big.
He's got it, he's actually in town. Like when he built mine, he was like in some shed at the back of this guy's place in the middle of nowhere, and you'd rock up and, a chicken had laid an egg in the hull. It was like a menagerie. There was all sorts of stuff going on in there. Yeah. But it was a little bit a bit of a rough show back then, but now he's got his own dealership and everything, so he's
selling Suzuki's now, isn't he?
Yeah.
He is Suzuki Marine here.
Yeah, I think he's the rep. So
right.
At the time when I bought the engine, it was whatever you wanted. But
they're probably the best plate boats that I've ever been in.
It punches above its weight.
Yours is what, 490? No,
480.
480.
And he measures it differently, as usable space. Like if you're buying a Quintrex or any off the market,
tip to toe.
Yeah, they try and make it look big.
Yeah.
But you put it beside a 5.2 and it looks the same size. It's unusual. They're a big boat and they're a heavy boat.
They ride well and dry. They're dry.
That is a very dry boat. I've got a few mates with custom plate boats in that sort of 4.8 to 5 metre range, and although I have been in other ones that have rode a bit better, just because I've got these massive reverse chines, it's a bit of a trade-off. I have the driest ride, but the big reverse chines, I think the hull just as you're pushing through the first wave, the fine entry is quite good. It pushes through fine, but as you're pushing through it, the force of the wave pushes up on the chines and it lifts the nose a bit. Yeah. And then as you go into the next one, it sort of punches a bit, so you do get the odd bang. But
you got trim tabs on that too, though.
Yeah, that made a huge difference. I think a lot of people sort of laugh when they went, 4.8 metre boat, why would you put trim tabs on it? But
I'd put trim tabs on a fucking tinny. If I had a side console, I would
absolutely
100% put trim tabs on it, because when you go fishing by yourself, it's never fucking never level on it, and you got to spend half an hour shifting eskies and shit.
Even when you do have a bigger boat, even when you don't and you're shifting eskies, they never stay where you want them anyway.
No.
So you're always constantly battling it. Trim tabs, they're not super expensive, but I reckon they're worth their weight in gold. You may never pay it off. They always, say, you'll save heaps on fuel and everything to put trim tabs on. I think you do save a bit.
Yeah, I get a bit better on mine. I get sort of in a sea, so we're talking coastal or whatever, blue water. I trim down, I don't know how many degrees it is, about 2 points out of about 8 points. So a quarter basically, I think. A quarter trim down on the tabs, and then trim up on my motor about 35%.
Yeah.
And I get heaps more stern lift. And I sort of, in that coastal chop, it's real nice. You just sit up on top of it and then your transom is on a wave and your bow's hitting the next wave.
Yeah.
And you just stay up on top. And I get really good economy and ride and speed that way. So I think they're fucking valuable, eh? And you can like fully, when you're getting a bit wet on one side in the shoulder and wind, you can like lift one side right up and sort of push, like cover a bit of fucking spray. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that a few times. I actually nearly come unstuck pretty bad once. I was trying to trim it out for the boys. I had a mate in the boat who hadn't really gone out to the reef very much. Yeah. And he drew the short straw and had to go on the left-hand side of the boat, coming back in a bit of the Lucinda sugar loader.
Yuck.
Disgusting chop that you get as it gets shallow. And so I was trying to use the trim tabs to trim him out, but because I had swell coming from one way, chop coming from the other, I was sort of having to zigzag through it a bit. It was blowing about 20 knots, I think, so it was pretty nasty weather, but because I had it trimmed too far to one side, I misjudged one wave and it sort of picked the arse of the boat up
shifted
a bit.
You?
Oh,
scary.
Yeah, it scared me. Like we had a 140 litre fiberglass esky up the front, and it
full
just
to the brim, probably
smack on the side of the boat, and
fuck,
didn't damage the esky surprisingly, but yeah, it was a bit scary.
Fucking hell. How bad is that, like when you're at the reef off the Lucinda and it's just glass, and then you look back inshore and you can see all these little shark tooth and white caps, and then as soon as you hit between Palm Islands and the mainland, it's just a fucking dog's breakfast, washing machine filth in there.
It is, yeah, it's not...
it's terrible.
And I know, like, I've sort of got it figured out now there. If it's... As soon as you get to October, you're going to get those horrible afternoon 20-knot breezes that come up. And if you want to come back in when it's a little bit nicer, you've got to wait till just on dark. So time your trip so that you're getting to the end of the sugar loader, like at about 6:30 or something like that.
Yep.
I think I got that sorted out. I figured it out a few times because I'd had a few hairy trips like that one. And I mean, that's a fantastic time to be out there because you're sort of on that straddling of winter to summer.
Yeah.
And you got coral spawning and everything like that.
Everything's feeding and rooting and carrying on.
You can put down a bit of cellophane on a hook just about sometimes, you'll catch something off there.
How about like the Spanos and the Wahoo and the Pelagics and shit that time of year, I reckon?
Yeah, well, that I know Bramble Reef and... well, everyone knows about Rib Reef. That's the hot spot for the commercial guys. They're breeding, and John Brewer as well. They're known as breeding reefs for the Spanish. And there's times there where, you can chuck out, dirty old pilchard that's dried out on the bait board.
Yep, and there's just Spanos under the boat. And we're not talking little cunts either. They're like 15 to 25 keggers. Yeah. Big dudes swimming around, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, they reckon who breed the same time as Spano, eh?
Yeah, I haven't caught a who yet, like, because my boat sort of limits my ability to get out. Like, I've been out to the shelf twice in it off Innisfail, which is about 65 k's to get there, which is much, much closer than Townsville, about half the distance. But every time I've been out there, I think it's just been, like, I haven't been trolling at the prime time. Yeah. Because I fished so many spots on the way out. It's like 1 o'clock in the arvo by the time I get to the shelf. So I need to have a bit more discipline and actually just...
drive straight there.
Go straight out there, just endure the drive.
I'm pretty keen to start doing more straight off here, eh?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some really nice ground.
Because, what is it, like 80k to the front of the reef here? Lucinda takes about 30 k's off your drive to the front of the reef.
Pretty much,
roughly.
Yeah. It's about 67 k's to get to the first reef on average, like depending where you go. Here. Yeah, like Lodestone and Keeper are very much of a muchness. Keeper's probably a fraction further. Lodestone's closer, but I haven't. Yeah, I've probably done more diving at the reef off Townsville than I have line fishing.
Yeah, I don't mind it because you don't have to travel as far by car. Well, Lucinda's like an hour and a half drive. Like car fuel and time on your trailer, like K's on your trailer, K's on your car, and then sort of my boat's got the fuel capacity to go there. And we've seen a few people when we went the other day, but they're all like shallow trout fishermen.
Just chasing trout up in the shallows. But that's no different to Lucinda.
Nah.
Like, trout is king, no matter where you go. Like,
they're so fucking easy. They're easy to catch on line and they're easy to eat, like easy to shoot on spear.
Well, with how bad the sharks are too, you actually got a chance of getting them up because they don't tussle you on the way up. Like a bit at the start, and then it's like pulling up a wet sock on a hook sometimes.
Basically, yeah.
Unless it's a bigger one, but there.
Fuck, we got some nannies that day.
Oh, yeah, they were hot. That was, when you see that sea under blackout, that's when you know.
We couldn't even see what the fuck they were sitting on the bottom because it was just black, eh?
No idea what sort of structure is down there because it was just too thick. If it wasn't bait, there was fish sitting on top of it, and then Trevor's sitting on top of the nannies, and it was full of life.
It was ridiculous. Well, we wouldn't have found that if you didn't fuck with my sounder.
A little bit of fine tuning, but it's funny, like I've been doing a few installs and stuff for people, and I've noticed, like, I think with yours, you know how we had to list it on the side a little bit to get it to read? Like, I think that your placement, like, it only refreshed my mind when I installed a transducer on the weekend, but they actually have specific instructions on the
degree,
you know, on how, like, when you go out and you test your boat, you need to test, like with yours, because it's a through hull, it's a bit difficult. Like if it's a transom mount, you can adjust it, but it's possible that yours maybe should have been just a fraction closer to the keel. Just because I think when you list it on that side, like the one that I installed on the weekend, I installed it to the T on the, like, exact instructions from Airmar, and it said, you know, the left hand corner of the transducer has to be 38 mil from the bottom of the hull.
Fucking Jesus.
I had it 38 mil. Like, I'm not a tradesman, but I had a tradesman with me who owned the boat, and I got him to look, and he said, yep, that's on the money. And, you know, after having done the water test, like, it was funny, we went in some rough stuff and it was a bit choppy. It was reading better than his previous sound already, but it wasn't great. And then when we went in the calmer water behind West Point, as soon as I walked to the back of the boat, there we go, bottom line, just
clean,
flat, absolutely beautiful. And then as soon as I walked back up to the front of the boat, no good. So I told him when he goes home, drop it down a couple mil, maybe, you know, 2 to 5 mil.
It's weird how that happens, eh? Well, I got that high speed pickup right beside that through hull too, which is a bit fucked up.
I think that's what would be the
because that'd be blowing water bubbles back, like they'd be hitting it coming into it and then bubbling back out over the transducer. So I'm going to delete that anyway, that pickup, and delete that as live on, just use it as storage, and then fucking probably shift that transducer down closer towards the keel. And I reckon that'll help heaps, because we bumped up the ping speed, heaps. We went ping speed max. Because we were doing we were reading clean bottom. It was glass out as well, but we were reading clean bottom in at 40, 45k an hour, eh?
Yeah, easy. I think he even got up to about 25 knots and it was fine. It was definitely, speed was a driver, but I think that was and it was the same on Sunday when I did that water test. The speed of the boat, the faster he went, like, it lifted the arse out of the water a bit more. And because the determining factor of how the sounder was reading was the height of the transducer, it needed to be a bit lower. As soon as he went faster, it lifted the bum a bit, and that was it. It started to sort of get a little bit dicey on the image. But
because he's running he's obviously running a transom mount. One of those, P66?
P66, they're my favourite. There's a simple transducer, but they've got that 11-degree beam angle at 200 hertz or kilohertz, and I think that's just, like, if you're doing that sort of, you know, just around the reefs and inshore sort of stuff, that is absolutely meant for reading at speed. And I very, very rarely use 50 hertz, but because it's a 20-degree beam angle, so it's a bit bigger. Like, I've tried playing around with 50 hertz so that at speed I'm picking up a wider area under my boat, because I thought, I might pick up a bit more. But no good. But I normally, well, this is with Simrad, and it might be different for people, but I tend to run a little bit faster scroll speed. So I only go times 2, so it's just a fraction faster. And so essentially, if you go over a small rock, or some small feature,
it'll be a sharp spike.
Like, if you've got it on just normal scroll speed, it'll look like a thin piece of grass, you know, coming up. It's bugger all, like just tiny line. But the faster your scroll speed is, it'll actually smooth it out. But there's a tipping point. Like, I know on the Garmin's, everyone runs super fast scroll speed, same as the Furuno, super fast scroll speed. But when I run it on the Simrads, I don't like much faster than 3 times, because I feel like it smooths it out too much, and if you've got a bit of bump, you just don't really pick up on that feature. But I've been in some pretty average conditions where my sounder isn't reading real clear on the bottom. Like every now and then it like has a little chunk taken out that it must have had a bubble or something.
Yeah.
And the determining factor for me on when I found stuff was that I'd played around with my gain. Like I had it on auto +2.
Yeah.
Is what setting I run that on, just to get a little bit, like it's a bit more noisy when you're in shallower water.
Yeah.
But I play around with that gain depending on what depth I'm in. Like if I'm sounding in, like if I'm at speed doing 20 to 25 knots in 60 to 70 metres of water, I usually dial the gain up just a touch, just to get a bit more...
Yeah. This dirty cunt's got his ball sack out.
I'm glad only you had to see that.
It's very small.
Looks like a sultana.
He's had one drink and now he's just been filthy. This is Chris, by the way. Are you coming in or not? You're a fuckhead.
Just trying to put you
No,
off.
he's just being a fuckwit.
Just making you, you have to put a mark on you.
Yeah. No, I'm going
recording.
to leave it there so people know he's just fucking walks around with his nut bag out. Unshaven nut bag.
Oh. Yeah, I'm definitely glad I didn't have to see that.
Yeah, that was a good chat then and you fucked it. It was great info.
Yeah, we're talking about the gain, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The settings.
So what does it do, sorry?
So, yeah, I dial it up a bit more when I'm in 60 plus metres of water, because I find that it just, like if there's bait or a change in bottom, you get a little bit better image. And I, like, it might not be +3 every time. Like it'll depend on, you know, what it looks like on the day, like, and your conditions of what you're boating in as well can make a big difference with that. Like if you dial it up too much and it's a bit rough, sometimes you get a bit too much noise. The other thing is noise rejection. I like to have a bit of noise because typically it's in the top of the water column, and what I'm looking for is in the bottom. So I don't really care if the top of the water column's, you know.
Yeah. What does that achieve though for what you're looking at on the bottom by having less noise rejection?
I think it...
You pick up more bait and shit.
Yeah, you see bait a lot clearer, and I think it defines whether the bait is connected to the bottom or not. And I always say that when I'm talking to people about reading at speed, like if you look at bait and the bait ball is close to the bottom, like because I'm always reading with 1 metre increments, so I'll have it zoomed...
Zoom right in, eh?
Zoom right in. Like it with the Simrads, when you're in less than 20 metres of water, you can go to half-metre increments. But as soon as you go over about 20, 25 metres of water, it automatically goes to 1 metre increments.
Yeah.
So I'll have that, you know, zoomed in full, you know, so all I'm really looking at is the bottom 5 to 10 metres of the water column.
Yep.
And if I see that, like, you know, bit of bait, but it's not connected to the bottom, so you can see that it's not like a pillar coming straight up off the bottom, then I tend to dismiss it sometimes. But other times, like if I see it connected to the bottom, I'll actually mark it, and I've found some really, really good ground.
And that's the good thing about Simrads, like they're so accurate like that. Like you can be tearing across doing 45k an hour, pick up one of them little sharp spikes, hit it, mark it, and spin around, and you're nearly spot on where it is, eh?
Oh,
it's fucking there.
And I think the functionality of it, like I've used a lot of different sounders in different boats, and like it's a similar operating system to the Lowrance, but I think Simrad just has, like it's a nicer finish.
Yeah, well, I think so. This Evo 3s compared to the Lives, I got told, I don't know if this is gospel or not. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Simrad have dual 1 kilowatt outputs. So there's a whole 1 kilowatt dedicated to GPS, whereas Lowrance have 4 500s. So that's why their side scan, I don't know if you've used the Lowrance Live side scan or structure scan, it's 10 times cleaner than a Simrad.
Okay.
Yeah, and Simrad read well as it is, and these ones are way cleaner because they dedicate the full 500 straight to the structure scan.
Okay.
I don't know what the others are allocated to, but
they got a quad core processor as well, which is what I hear everyone marketed as. Oh, it's
quad core, so that's your 4 500s.
Yeah.
So your 4 500s, and then your Simrad's dual core, which is dual 1 kilowatt. So it's the same processing capacity, but split up, just partitioned differently, I think. I don't have my full head around it all, but I know Simrad's better in blue water, especially in and they're more applicable to like MR tech too.
Yeah, I think the biggest selling point for me with the Simrad, like I used to own Lowrance before that, and then when I went to the Hammerhead, I'd spent so long trying to find the boat that I wanted.
Yeah.
that I'd saved enough money to sort of splurge a bit, and I thought,
Yeah.
stuff it, I'm going to get a really good sounder. And I looked into the Simrads, and at the time it was Evo 2 was, the duck's nuts.
Yeah.
There was no Evo 3 or anything like that. And the real selling point for me, if anything now, like I didn't think of it at the time, but that little dial on the top right-hand corner, that is like...
Yeah, if you don't have one of those fucking dials, you're kidding yourself.
You can control the whole unit from it.
Basically.
It's
It's fucking ridiculous. I tell you what, it's made me think of it. So when I got my Sportsman, it's got a 9-inch Evo 3 in the dash, but the first thing I did was buy a 15-inch Solix. And like it's in a box under my house at the moment. Like I bought it, and it's an amazing sounder, but the structure scan on it is unbelievable. Like stupid unbelievable.
That's got mega?
Yeah, mega imaging.
Mega imaging? Yeah.
So yeah, you're talking like instead of 800, you're talking 1,000 kilohertz.
Yeah.
But in dirty water, it's fucking
no good.
terrible.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely disgusting. And the GPS on it, it's like caveman processors and shit running a high-end piece of equipment. Like it's perfectly applicable to like clean water and estuarine applications, I reckon. Unless you buy those aftermarket maps and shit, maybe. But it was the slowest, terrible GPS I've ever seen. And I'm not sponsored by a Simrad or anything like that. Well, I'm just saying how it is. But the side scan's unbelievable when you're in clean water. If you're in dirty water, it's fucking shit. And the GPS is shit. Whereas Simrad, like you don't get as good a structure scan, but it's a good, well-rounded sound, and the service is good and all that sort of shit. And it's super NMEA compatible, and it works with. What does it work with? Yamaha, Suzuki, Mercury.
Yeah, I think it's really dialed in on Mercury because you can actually plug your vessel view into the sounder and it reads it all out.
I've got a Yamaha dial.
Okay.
So like if you were to buy a Yamaha gauge and take a photo of that and paste it on my Simrad screen, that's what I'd have.
Oh, right.
So I've got like a full Yamaha gauge. It's pretty sure it's called a Yamaha interface cable.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, where it's just a gauge on your 9-inch.
Because I don't know why I haven't done this until now, but I've only just connected my Vessel View 4 into my Simrad via the NMEA 2000 backbone. It actually had an NMEA 2000 port on the back of the Vessel View gauge, and all I needed to do was run that to the backbone, and then everything talks to it.
So do you get like fuel data and everything, like live fuel data?
Everything, because unfortunately, like the pitot sensor on mine, I've had it replaced a few times, and if you're launching in creeks and stuff, like they get dirty and they
shit.
go to crap. Yeah. So I've ended up just deciding that I'm going to use the GPS speed from the Simrad to get my data as to what sort of economy I'm getting.
Well, I had to buy a fuel data sender. So it's like a USB stick with an NMEA plug on the end of it.
Okay, yeah.
Had to plug that in to get that data as a live feed. So like fuel burnt, so I just reset my gauge to 0 every time I fuel up.
Yeah.
And then it just shows me exactly litres burnt, straight from the engine. So I know exactly what I've used. But because it's got my boat has a float valve, the float gauge in it. And I drove, we did a trip in a top end Barra series year before. And we went out, for the people who know, out the mouth of Shady Camp, probably 35 k's to the mouth, and then another 30 odd down the coast into the Wildman River, which is around Point Stewart. Fished all weekend, had to buy 60 litres of fuel off a mothership that was there doing charters and shit. And then come back, we hit the mouth of Shady Camp on 0%, and then I drove 35 k's to the ramp.
Oh.
So 35, 40 k's to the ramp.
So it's safe to say that it's very accurate, that sensor.
Yeah. So I don't even use it anymore. I just reset my gauge.
Yeah.
And just fucking put a live feed in. And it's a little bit more work, but it's like super accurate.
Yeah, that's why I got the Vessel View. Was I looked into the fuel senders and stuff, and I just think that the technology's been surpassed now. Like if you can get the computer to read what your fuel flow rate is and work out exactly what you're using, it's pretty much spot on. Like it's within 1% on my boat. When I fuel it up, it's so bloody close to what it says on the gauge. So I'm pretty confident about what it uses. But yeah, the Simrad, like going back to the Simrad topic, I think because I did IT at uni and the user functionality, because I did a course on user interface design, probably the only one that I did any good at. But we used to do these tests on websites where we'd look at, you know, how many clicks you had to get, like someone would say, oh, I want you to do this on the website. And so you'd count how many clicks it took you to do it. And obviously the less clicks, the better user functionality it was. And like some of the stuff that you have to do on these other brands, like you got to go through 15 menus just to do something simple.
See, fuck that.
Yeah. And with the, like the thing that I use all the time and it's super quick and it takes a second is if you go over some good ground, you press on the screen where you saw that little blip or whatever, and then you press the mark button, like it's actually got the physical mark button, and bang, it's there. It marks up on your GPS. If you've got the sounders linked via Ethernet, it's on both
like
sounders.
Live and instant too.
Instant straight away. Because a lot of the time, like if I'm heading out, you know, doing a bit of distance, I leave my tracks. I need to delete some because it does slow down the machine. They clog
up your fucking machine bad. Like you can have 10,000 marks, but if you've got fucking 100 tracks, it makes you sound way worse.
Oh, well, you know, I didn't realise this until I uploaded it into a program, but when it's doing tracks, it like
pinging GPS.
Almost, like a mark every single however many meters or whatever it is. It's ridiculous. So you chews up a lot of data, but they are useful because then you know where you've been. And it's amazing sometimes, like I've driven, you know, in between two tracks where I'm 20 meters to the left of one and 20 meters to the right of one, and then I run over this small little rock or something, and you think, I can't believe I missed that. You know, I drove past it twice, and the only thing that gave it away that time was that there was just that little bit of bait on it or something like that. And so that's why if I see anything where that bait's connected to the bottom, I mark it, and then on the way home, I'll either run parallel with my track and then crisscross over the marks that I found on the way out.
And you normally pick up other shit too, doing that.
Heaps, and if you're covering fresh ground every time, like try and you know, make your trip home so that you're taking a bit of a different angle or whatever. It makes it all worthwhile, and you end up mapping, and you get a really good understanding of the area.
Well, when you and I went out the other day, that was the first time I've been out there in that boat, had nothing, and literally like, fuck me dead, we found some shit. And just being able to like have your sounder dialed in to be able to do 45k an hour to read at speed and cover all that ground. Like we went fucking 3/4 of the way the shelf and back, almost, just about, and we fucking found so much stuff, like all that little channel with all them trout bombies in the cunt. We stopped marking them.
Oh yeah, you get sick of going over the good ground.
So it's like 35 metres of water, and there was these bombies in there that were just like fucking 5, 8, 10 metres high.
That was fantastic ground, and I've noticed it no matter where I fish, whether I'm up Innisfail or in towns or whatever. The further you get out, the closer you get to the shelf. There's just more ground. Like
it almost makes it worse. It almost makes it harder
because you don't know what to fish. But I don't know if I've got it figured out properly, but I've found that particularly like if I'm in Innisfail and I'm out towards the shelf, like just before the shelf. If I go over something, like you'll find that many little like 1 metre or 2 metre rises in the middle of nowhere in 65 to 70 metres of water, and you go, oh, look at that, you know. If you found that, you know, 15 kilometres before you got there, you'd be, you know, your brain would explode because that's what you're looking for. But you just see so many of them and you want to fish them all, and you can fish them all, but you'll get bugger all.
And a lot of them aren't loaded, like.
No.
Whereas if you find... Well, Nannies is a perfect example. You just find this one fucking rock in the middle of nowhere and there's no other rocks near it, and the cunt will just be lit.
Oh, then
like that thing we found. I don't even know what it was.
Desert. Yeah.
I want to go over there and stand it when it is dead so I can know what it is. Well, it must be just a rubble patch, or I don't know.
I know I've got some marks that look similar to that when it's lit up, and I bet you it'll be just a little half-metre rise with a bit of fern or something on top of it. It won't be much at all. It'll be a very, very small bit of... But it's probably in an area where current pushes through.
Yeah, because it was fucking chockers.
Yeah, well, you had that zoomed right in, but you couldn't see 10 metres of the water column because it was just all
full
fish.
Of bait and fish. And it was fucking, like, not a taxman. We never had a shark. And we fished it twice.
I don't understand that.
It makes no sense,
very
man.
Rare.
We roll in on it and we're like, oh, fuck, this is all right. And that dog cunt in your blue boat, I don't know if he probably doesn't listen to this, but I'd love to punch you in the fucking teeth. He planed over to us and swung past us just to market, eh? Fucking
there's
dogs.
But see, the thing is, like, he doesn't have an electric with spot lock, and
No.
it's such a small pin. Like, if we weren't sitting right on top of that thing, we wouldn't have been on the fish.
Yeah.
But it was a strange skill. Like, if I fish off Lucinda, when I find nannies and patches like that, they'll normally be similar size. Like, you get the odd donkey in there.
Yeah,
but
well,
that was from like 45 centimeters up to 75 centimeters.
Yeah, and we got a couple of big ones, like up around, like, what were they, 80 something?
80 something, yeah. Early 80s.
They were early
I think, were the
mid-80s,
biggest
yeah.
ones, yeah.
Yeah, it was fucking stupid.
It was weird, but you had to wait for that. Like, you had to pick, like, let the pickers get through it.
Yeah, you had to let the small ones go for a bit until you got like those real good knocks. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. And
I
then,
haven't had to do that for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, last time I had to do that was off Innisfail, because I've noticed, like, further you get out towards a shelf, like, I've been in 115 metres of water catching 42 centimetre nanny guy. Like, you would
That's
think
fucked.
in 115 metres of water that'd be big fish. But I think, like, for nanny fishing, like, you can still get really good results at the shelf, but I think you get a more varied size range. Like, you
that
get
75 centimetres is primo, man.
that like your recovery on that fish is pretty spot on. Like,
Yep.
I probably lean more to that sort of 65, 70 centimetre size, but like, for a recovery wise, 75 is on the money. Like, I've caught some big nannies, and you get a lot of meat off a fish that's above 65. Like, they are worth keeping at that
What's your
size.
PB? 92?
98?
98?
Yeah.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, it was a big fish.
That's
I'd be
a
wanting
big
to
fish.
crack
Well, I was
the
with you when you got
10
the 91,
Yeah,
and that was a fucking horse.
Well, that was off the exact same spot I got that 98, and it was funny when I got that up. Like, it was a really interesting day, that one. We stopped at a wonky hole on the way out to get some liveys.
Yeah.
And we foul hooked a doggy mackerel on the bait jig.
Yeah.
And we got it up and we're like, holy, that's a big doggy. We ended up, I don't know how we landed it on that real thin line, but we got it in. And so I said to the boys, oh, we'll keep that for bait. And so I had this fresh doggy mackerel slab, and he couldn't resist it. But it was just, the fight to get it up and to not have any taxman, touch you up.
It was stupid. I'm talking about where we went, but like, we fished it in the morning, and then we got, I don't know, where we get 10 fish, 12. Our bag limit was 9 each.
Yeah.
And we got probably 10 or 12 fish, and we're like, fuck it, let's go find some more shit. And then we fished all day, come back there like on the knock, and we're like, we better check it on the way home. Still loaded, completely different time of the tide, completely different tide. And we finished, I don't think we quite bagged, but we had a full esky anyway.
It was
something stupid. We were just like
close to baggy, but we had that much fish. It was
fucking. We were like, that's enough.
You could have dropped. I reckon you could have dropped down, buddy. Cellophane, like I was saying before, and you would have pulled a fish in. It was just, they were hot. They were really
and
hot.
not a shark. And I don't even know.
You couldn't ask for it.
That's where I got that red off.
Yeah, you got that red off.
I got a red off there. Big Spango. That Cobe.
Yeah,
was that Cobe off there?
Nah, that was off a shoal bit before.
Yeah, it was too. Yeah.
Yeah, you will get them off that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you can get them through all of the other fish that are
fucking
more than willing
bludgers.
to eat your bait.
Cockroaches of the sea.
Yeah.
Fucking, I might have a piss, mix a rum, and we'll fucking resume.
Sounds good.
No, it worked. We're back. And what is this? It's fucking good.
It's the Kraken, but it's a copy, or I don't know, it's supposed to be similar to the Kraken. But I've actually just started playing around a little bit with doing a molasses styled wash.
Yeah, right.
So that one there's just a neutral spirit that I've flavoured.
Because you're brewing methanol for fuel for your lawnmower.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
That's correct.
If I get asked officially, but it's not.
It's fucking good.
Yeah, that one's actually. So this one here is what I call a double distilled run. So it's technically the heads and the tails of the distilling process. I collect it all, and then once I've got enough of that distillate, I run it back through the still again,
And then you take the heads and tails off that. So you've got
I separate because there's heads, tails, and the hearts.
The hearts is the bit you keep.
The hearts is the bit you want to keep. So as you're boiling off a wash, which is like, you basically put yeast, sugar, and some sort of food to ferment, and as it ferments, it creates alcohol, and then when you boil it at a certain temperature, alcohol evaporates, and then you condense it, and you get your distillate.
So that's distilling. The distilling process is the boiling of the alcohol to get the vapors that go back in a liquid sort of thing. Yeah,
so you turn the vapors back into a liquid through like a cooling process, and there's different types of stills and everything, but with this particular one, like I separate out the heads first. So when you smell them, like as you're distilling that product, you're boiling it. So it happens over a period of time. You're just boiling it and you've got this distillate coming out. And the first bit, the head smells like really sweet and you go, ooh, that smells nice. But that's the shit that gives you a hangover.
Yeah, right.
You wait until it just smells like pure ethanol. And like I'm a scientist by trade, so I know what pure ethanol smells like. Used it in labs, so I sniff it and I go, yep, that smells like pure ethanol. And so that's the stuff that you want to keep. And then once it gets to the end of the distilling process, you get your tails. And it smells a bit like wet cardboard. It doesn't smell very nice. So if you sniff it and you're like, oh, that smells like it's got a bit of a ping to it. So that's when you know it's tails. So when I collect those bits, because even though you discard them and you only keep your hearts, like you don't discard them completely. I just store them in a big 5 litre jar and then I run them through again. And then you get your double distilled run where you still separate your heads and your tails, but your hearts has been distilled twice. So this one should be super smooth that I brought in for you.
So basically you're taking your hearts and then distilling that, taking your heads and tails off that lot of hearts.
You're close.
Sort of?
Sort of. So you're distilling and then you keep your hearts from the first round and you keep your heads and tails as well in 2 separate jars. And then the heads and tails from the separate jar, like every time you do that, you just keep topping it up because you get about maybe a litre of heads and tails and about 2 litres of hearts, depending on what wash you do. And once you've got 5 litres collected of heads and tails, then you run it again through the still. So you pour all of that in and then top it up with water. And then you end up with your, you run the distilling process again and you run it as you would a normal wash, except when you're taking away, like you actually get a lot more hearts because you've put in something that's been through the distilling process already. Yeah, right. And so it's extra smooth.
Yeah, fuck.
So
it's fucking delicious and like fair kick in the teeth too.
Yeah, it's only 40% this, but for some reason it
I feel like there's
knocks you around a bit.
I feel like there's no like label on the bottle that says it's 40%.
Yeah, well, it should be. I tested all with the alcometer, but it's a bit. I think it's probably that scientist that comes out of me where I feel like I'm working with like a chemistry set. I get that mad scientist sort of feel out of it.
Experiment with the and it's probably fucking 120 proof some shit.
Yeah, it's a bit of a rabbit hole. Once
moonshine with a bit of flavouring.
Yeah. Well, now I've gone proper down the rabbit hole, and I'm starting to use a pot still and. Rather than like the washes that I do now are just a sugar wash and you get a neutral spirit that just smells like pure alcohol. But now I've changed the way that I've modified my still, and the way that I distill it actually keeps some of the flavour of the wash. Yeah. So when you use molasses as a part of your food and sugar in the fermenting process, when you distill it with this different type of still, it actually keeps some of the smell of the molasses in it. If you go to the Bundy factory and do the tour, they'll give you this like clear liquid in a jar to smell, and you can actually smell the molasses in the clear liquid with the alcohol sort of scent.
Yeah, fuck.
And so what they do after that is they've kept the flavour of that wash in the distilling process, and then they put it on, put it in barrels, and then they take, like the way that they flavour the distillate is with, wood, so the tannins from the wood. So once I've only just started doing this, so I'm a bit green with it, but I'm interested to see how it goes. But it's a more traditional way, like it's, I guess, a small scale version of how the commercial distilleries actually make a wash. Except I won't be using barrels, I'll be using like wood staves or chips or something.
Yeah, you put chips in a lot of your...
Yeah, chips, I mean, they're cheap and they're easy to get out of the jar and everything like that.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind getting like some charred, like American oak staves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a chunk of wood that they've sort of cooked with fire.
Kill vampires with and shit.
Yeah, a bit of silver in there. Probably don't want to be drinking it. But
Yeah.
no, it's good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a bit of a... I've probably got too many hobbies now, but...
Fuck, you bought a house and there's like veggies and shit, gardens, and you got
I'm
a
an
fluffy dog
agricultural
now.
scientist. I gotta sort of dig into my
I'm not complaining because I get free veggies and fucking I like get cheap and good piss.
Well, look at this. You're just hooking into it, mate.
And that it's fucking good. I got a beer and a fucking cup of rum, and then I'm doing quite well.
Yeah, you guys in the territory, I don't know how you do this first gear and second gear at the same time.
Fuck, you should see my mates. People think I'm a bit of a savage on the piss because like I'm all about them brekkie beers when you get in the water. I'm all about brekkie beers. Like they have a beer on sunrise. Yeah, if you haven't had one, it'll change your life. Or fuck you for the day, one of the two.
I've done that before when I was a bit younger. I think my body just doesn't handle it as much anymore.
1 carton per person per day in the territory. But like
your rules are different now. You can be pretty sloshed.
There's no alcohol limit.
Yeah.
But I've never seen anyone do anything real fucking dumb. No dumber than what cunts do here. Really. And it's way more fun. In saying that, it inhibits your serious fishing ability sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you get by like lunchtime and you're just like, oh, I'm ready for a fucking nap.
Well, I haven't done it for the last couple of years because my mate that I normally do it with, we've got a bit slack on it, but we used to do a start of Barra season and end of Barra season trip to Hinchinbrook every single time. And we always, I've known him for a very long time now, like since I was in primary school pretty much, and both him and I really love cougar. We used to
cougar fucking
it's a bourbon. Yeah, it's a nasty cheap.
It's like
bourbon.
Green bottle cunt.
Yeah. it's nasty, but it's just got the nostalgia factor. Like we sort of push it to the side. Like we're both. He's the person who I learnt a lot of my distilling and stuff off.
I think that's why I like Bundy.
Yeah,
like
it's nasty.
I know, but like I drink a lot of like whiskey neat and stuff, like nice whiskeys, and I like wine and I like good beer and all that sort of stuff. And I like all different sorts of rum. But at the end of the day, if you pass me a nice spice rum and a nice Bundy at the same time,
you go for the Bundy.
I'd grab the Bundy.
Yeah, righto.
It's weird. And like Bundy tins, like the old black rats.
Oh, the black rats. Yeah.
That's like you crack on them and you go, that's nostalgia. That's cold winter's nights back home chasing pigs in the middle of the fucking frost-ridden hell, running kilometres in the dark.
Oh,
that's
your
Bundy
nostalgia.
rums.
Well, I have to say I've got a soft spot for black rats as well. My cousin who I used to live with, we almost religiously smack a few black rats when we've done a trip out to the shelf off Innisfail. Because
no coppers out there.
No copies out there. And we're normally coming back at stupid o'clock, so it's not too much of an issue. But it's good little way to celebrate. But it's funny, I can't drink on the water if it's night time because I get seasick if I've got alcohol in my system. Yeah, I don't know why. I've done it before where I've had a few drinks and then I just felt crook for the rest of the night because it throws my sense of balance out or something.
Mine fucks me if I like. And a fair few mates of mine will contest for this. Like, if I have a few drinks the night before, I am fucked. You like on the water till smoke go, but like crook, like seasick crook, not hungover crook. Like
it affects you a bit.
Yeah, it fucking rolls me, eh? And no amount of tablets or anything else you can do will fix it until all of a sudden, and I'll just go like, boom, come good. Yep, and I'm just completely fine. It's super weird. Yeah. But it must be, it's obviously something to do with the alcohol.
Everybody's different, eh?
But I've been caught out more times than not. I think I'd learn my lesson. But I get really excited pre-trip, especially like comps and stuff. You get really excited, like billfish comps and stuff. You get really excited and you have a few beers and you're fucking driving out there and you have a few beers if you're not driving, and you get out there and you have a few more beers and you catch up with everyone that's doing the comp. because the billfish comps up there are real social. So you catch up with everyone, you have a few beers, and you're all fucking ready to roll and pack everything. And you wake up in the morning, you're like, fucking still feel good, ready for another beer. Get halfway out there and start rolling around when you're trolling that like sort of,
that sloshing in the swell.
10, 12k an hour, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, I regret that.
Oh, I've been through that. Like when we do reef trips off Lucinda, we tend to, like, if it's the weekend's looking good, we'll leave, like, knock midday Friday, get up there Friday arvo. And, you're always jacked. Like, sometimes if it's, like, if we're proper, like, keen, we'll dunk the boat in and go for a quick arvo look, have a look at a few inshore wonkies and little rocks and stuff like that. But, when you get, like, if you don't do that and you come back, you're on the beers at the Lucinda pub. And
that's dangerous too, and them cheap pizzas.
Oh.
And the beers there, and the atmos there is fucking good.
Oh,
like, it's packed, man, on Fridays.
It's a great little spot. And the food's, like, really good. And it's just it's a good boys outing, like, if you got a few mates, just go there, have a few beers, stay the night at the caravan park. You can walk down. They've got good filleting facilities and everything. Like, it's a good weekend. If you've, like, as it comes, we're actually getting closer now to when it'll actually be really a bit better weather. And, like, the only thing is you get this year it might actually be one of the best years to do it, because we won't have 10 billion grey nomads staying at all the caravan parks and everything.
Don't even start me on them cunts, fucking hell. Just like, I don't mind them clogging up caravan parks and that, but on the roads, man.
Oh,
like, you shouldn't be towing a caravan or towing something over a certain length or width should be a fucking, like, ticket under your license, I reckon. I'd do the course to tow my boat. I would dead set do it if it meant that them fuckheads could drive properly.
Well, I reckon they should include how to reverse into, like, down a boat ramp into that course as well, because there is just, I pull my hair out at boat ramps sometimes. Like, people just, especially recently with, like, all this COVID stuff, like, I've never seen so many boats. Like, I got a mate who does the surveys at the ramps, and he said that he counted at the Townsville Rec Boating Park 220 trailers or something. Yeah. That is like, I've never seen that's a huge, like, there's four designated ramps with 4 lanes per ramp, so it's a big facility.
It's huge. It's unreal.
The parks is, like, there's that many car parks, and I actually had to park up on the grass, like, with my boat one day there. I couldn't believe how many people. But I tell you what, if you want to get frustrated with people trying to put boats on trailers, like, geez, that's a time to go.
Fucking hell, man, I could have a rant about this shit, if you're in anything less than 6 meters and you don't drive the cunt on, you're a pussy. Change my fucking mind. Change my mind, because fuck me dead, I get that frustrated. And then, you know what else annoys me? When cunts are putting boats in, and they put it in and tie it straight off to the pontoon right at the butt of the ramp.
At the bottom.
So the next motherfucker can't get their boat in. Oh, man. Yeah, and full bar. And one more, and then I'll move on, is fucking cunts that come sticky beacon at the ramp with no boat.
Oh,
they just go and do a loop and get in the fucking road.
But, we're going to be those people one day.
Probably when we can't.
Be just, when you can't put a boat in or you can't be fucked, you just be driving down there and talking to the young fellas. Oh, how'd you go? Did you get many? That'll be me one day. Like, I feel for them a little bit, because I can see my future there.
I'll be down there as an old man throwing chickens across cunts' lines. Old jokes. And then they'll all be like too respectful to not punch me out. Because I'm old. Because
you're old, that's right. You can play the old card then.
You said wonkies before. You still fishing wonkies?
Yeah, I've actually got a bit of a project with QUT to do with research on wonky holes.
Right.
Yeah, because opportunistically, like, being within, like, research and agriculture, this lady came from Queensland University of Technology to do, like, a presentation on like submarine groundwater discharge and all that sort of stuff. So she was looking at the paleo channels, but her project primarily was sampling the when people have a bore, they're tapping into an underground aquifer.
Yeah.
And sometimes if the aquifer has, if it's an actual river, it'll actually, like, you can still pump water from that sort of thing. Like the property we had up in Innisfail before we left there, when I was living there with my family, we had this bore on what they called a river. Like they actually estimated how much flow there was. So her thing was looking at the like taking a sample from those underground aquifers. And so when I spoke to her, I sort of said, have you heard about wonky holes? And of course she did, because that's sort of like the end point of what she was researching.
Yep.
And so we've partnered together to try and sample and find out, is the stuff that she's finding in the underground aquifer on land the same as what she's finding out in the ocean.
Right.
And so if there's anyone listening who's a free diver that can go down 20 to 30 metres and wants to take a sample jar with them, I've been trying to find people to actually get a point source sample, because I've got this apparatus at the moment that I use where I put like a 24-ounce sinker on it, and it's this like Perspex tube that's open, and so I lower it down on it's like a rope, a thin, just like anchor rope, and once it hits the bottom, I slide this lead weight down the rope, and it hits the top, and it sort of closes the...
Takes like a saw.
Yeah, it's like a jar. Yeah. It closes the jar.
What are they called? Like a section of your... What's that called?
There's a special name for it. Like it's weird. It's like... It only takes about a litre of water, of sample from down deep, but because I got spot lock on the boat, it's so easy to just sit over the top and you're in the hole. But the problem is, like, I've got to be there on the turn of the tide, so there's no tidal influence, and if there is anything discharging, I can actually sample it. But the problem that I've got is that the stuff that I need to sample is actually in Bowling Green Bay. And I've spent, I don't know how, like I reckon I would have spent maybe like 50 hours of trolling over the last 2 years looking for wonky holes out there. And I haven't had any luck yet. Yeah. But, surprisingly, like when I go off Lucinda and Innisfail and stuff like that, I've actually picked them up at speed. Like it's got to be a sheet of glass to see them, but it's quite obvious,
Have you ever poked around on site? Well, it's probably too deep out there, but I've done a fair bit of shit locally here in shallow water, and you can see the fresh coming out of the ground, like seeping out of it. Like you can see this little dimple, like golf ball dimple, and you can see this fucking like plume of shit coming out of it.
Yeah, I've not, like, I don't know. I think the best information I've ever got on wonky holes is from some mates that I've got that free dive them all the time.
Yeah.
And there's one guy in particular that...
I was about to ask you this, because it was you that was telling me the guy that like dove in one, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, before we go to that, I've got a few listeners from around the traps that don't probably know what one is.
Okay.
So that's only based on, I've got a few listeners in the States and stuff.
Yeah.
So what is a wonky hole?
So a wonky hole, I guess probably the easiest way to describe it is it's a point where, like, an old river system that, it's obviously been covered up by sediment and whatever over the years, but it's a weak point in that path that it's travelling where it breaks the surface, and it's normally associated... It's normally associated with, like, a different type of sediment that's been deposited in the ocean, and that's, from a particular period of time, like, obviously where the continental shelf is off Australia or the East Coast now, that used to be the old, line where the water used to come up to. And over the years, obviously, the water levels come up, and so we've got these old paleo channels is what they call them. Yeah. And they're, if you simplify it down, it's just an old riverbed. And
they go to the reef, eh?
Yeah.
They sort of get lost towards the end of the reef.
That's right, yeah. Like there's actually a guy who I work with that did a PhD on the hydraulic nature of Innisfail region, and that's just a completely different kettle of fish, because you've got to think, like, a lot of these underwater rivers are driven by our wet season. So you get, bulk rain, you get all of this leaching into the underground. That water's got to go somewhere. It makes it into these underground rivers, and then it flows out and then, discharges through these wonky holes. So there's actually, I a lot of people, like, you can buy courses on it now. You can, see it. It's so popular. Like wonky holes are the big thing. But if because I've got that science background, like I've always had an interest in it before it all got popular, and there's so much scientific literature around that you can learn from. And one particular piece of literature that really interested me was there's an inshore reef off like in between the mainland and Palms, and they had these because it's a well-known area for a lot of these wonky holes because of just that area gets massive rainfall, and there's lots of big creek systems and stuff, so there's a lot of old paleo channels that run under through there, and there's so many wonky holes in that area that in one particular year a research study that was doing coral coring were able to identify stunted coral growth on inshore reefs because of the amount of fresh water. So
holy fuck.
So they saw a ring on this coral that was showing like there was a wet season that went until October or something like that. But it wasn't.
Yeah, righto.
It wasn't like they looked at all the other coral cores that they took around there, and it didn't show the same thing. And they said, well, why are these ones that we took in this area so different? And it was because there was such a high quantity of fresh water getting pumped out by the wonky holes for such a long period of time.
They weren't getting the nutrients they required to grow.
Yeah, it wasn't saline enough in that area for the coral, so it stunted the growth of it. So
that's unreal. Coral coring's pretty cool. Because for those people that don't know, I used to work for AIMS, Australian Institute of Marine Science, and now I work for CSIRO. I'm not a scientist. I used to do facility management and operational management there, but learned a fair bit of stuff and did a fair few field trips and shit. And that sort of shit is insane. Like, I'm diverting a bit, but IMOS, so International Marine Observation Society. Yeah. So that what's the cyclone that hit the land here? Oh fuck, was it last year? Year before?
Was that the one that went up Bowen Way?
Might have been. It might have. No, it wasn't the one that fucked the Keppels. It was the one after that.
Ugh.
I don't know. Anyway, there was a cyclone here that maybe, I don't think, it might not have done fuck all, but it went offshore and dissipated. So the weather pattern, like, you couldn't tell. And then if you look at IMOS's ocean currents, there was this massive eddy from the cyclone rolling down the coast for months later. Like, it's not relative to wonky holes, but like that sort of shit's like super intriguing.
Well, that'll be picked up on the corals when they do the coring.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, that's the data you can get, and you can't, like, by looking at weather patterns and stuff on bomb and shit, you don't notice.
No.
The cyclone's dead and gone, but it's still doing shit. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, it's pretty much like tree growth rings in a way.
Yep.
Because I've seen, like, I went to the AIMS Open Day, and that was fantastic. If they ever open it up again, I highly recommend going and having a look. And they basically drill a hole through these big parietes, massive big hole, and then they replace it with pH neutral concrete, because that's the same calcium carbide as what the coral's makeup is, and so these or carbonate, not carbide.
There's a couple of big cores in AIMS on display.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and you can actually see the flood events and everything. It's really interesting. So. Yeah, anyway, I guess we're diverting off what a wonky hole is, but that should be a pretty good understanding of, they're basically a hole in the ocean floor where it's gone to like a softer sort of sediment like mud, and it's just forced that pressure. So when you get a heavy rainfall event, those underwater rivers flow, and then that weak point out in the ocean is where they burst out. And so I guess from like a perspective of someone who's looking at the potential impacts, like we have a look, like I used to work a lot in like trying to change agriculture to be more sustainable, and we looked a lot at surface runoff of contaminants and whatever from farming or industry, or even your normal people in their backyard fertilizing their roses or whatever. And like surface runoff has exposure to sunlight, and it's also got a lot of like bio layers in a way. Like it's got to go through, seaweed and grasses and all that sort of stuff, and those things uptake nutrients and stuff like that. But what we haven't quantified, and this is the whole point of the research that I'm involved in with QUT is to look at, is that because we do get nutrients and stuff going down when we get those heavy rainfall events and they hit those rivers. So are they because they're not exposed to sunlight, they're getting like a free trip straight out halfway to the reef? Is that what we're going to find? Because she's finding the results that there is nitrogen and stuff in that groundwater. Yeah. And we want to know if it's still popping up out there. So it could be an interesting little thing. But wonky holes,
what do they attract fish?
Well, they're like a little ecosystem, because it pumps out this nutrient and stuff like that, like we hypothesised. If you look around the outside of a wonky hole, there's a lot, it spews out bits of rubble, and there's a lot of algae and little, bits and pieces that start growing around it. So it creates this little ecosystem, and the wonky holes are called wonky holes because of the trawlers back in the day. They called them those because they get the nets and the boards caught in those soft areas and it drag them down.
It's like a divot, eh? It's weird. It looks. It sounds sounds as in sounding with a sounder. It's got if you sound over them well, they it's like a cavern underneath the bottom.
There's a depression, and you can see some of them can be 30 meters wide. There's one wonky hole that I've got that's massive. It's about 20 or 30 meters wide, and it's actually got two holes in the hole. So there's a depression in the bottom, and then there's two holes that come out of the hole, on the sides.
Yeah.
And the wonky holes actually change in formation as you go up and down the coastline, depending on how much hydraulic pressure, I guess, they get from, the mountain ranges and all that sort of thing. So the further you go north, the closer those big mountain ranges are to the coastline. And so you'll get different formations of wonky holes. Some will sort of pop out of the side. So they won't actually be like a whole hole. They'll look like a lump with a bit of a hole pointing out on a 45-degree angle out of the bottom.
Yeah.
And some of them will be just like a tube that just goes down. And others will be like a bit of a flat depression with smaller holes that sort of pop up.
Yeah,
and then, of course, there's the ones that are further out. They're in deeper water, and they're probably the most desirable for fishermen because they tend to have a bit more corally sort of stuff, and
stuff around.
You get your red emperor and trout and all those other sort of other species.
You got to make we spoke about it before, but you got to make that dived them, or he dove in one, or we followed a. Yeah. What was the story where he followed a big fuck off nanny? Yeah. And the nanny swam into the wonky hole.
Yeah, that was that massive one that I was telling you about. That's 30-meter big depression in the bottom, and the hole, one of the holes that comes out of the side of it, was so big. He was following he estimated he does a lot of diving and estimated about decent fish 70 to 80 sort of centimeters, and lined it up, and then it swam into the hole, and he could have swam his body into the hole. Some of them are massive,
because they push a lot of current and shit too. Hey, when was it? I'm pretty sure it was also you that was telling me you dive down there and you sink really fast.
You can feel the force, the flow. Yeah, I've got a mate who scuba dives one off Babinda. Yeah. And it's like a little volcano, he says. It sort of comes up into a point, and there's the hole in the middle. And when it's flowing, I think that one's actually driven more by the islands as opposed to the land. And
how do you mean? Rain on the islands?
Rain on the islands, yeah. That's his theory of it. Yeah. I haven't gone down on it or anything like that, but so this particular one, he says that when you've got a lot of that hydraulic pressure, you can actually, on a super calm day, he's actually seen a bit of a boil on the surface from the force. So he's actually scuba dived down, had a look at it, and then when he wanted to come back up, he just got into the flow of the water and pushed him back up to the surface.
That's a fucking lot of water.
That's a lot of pressure, but the jury's out. I'm still trying to understand when they do flow, because they reckon that straight after rain, everyone goes, oh yeah, they're going to be flowing. But I've had a number of mates who free dive them that reckon that they don't actually flow straight away.
Well, it's got to get down into the reservoir.
Yeah, it's got to push through, and they reckon that it's several months after a heavy rainfall event that they flow. Yeah. And that's why I've got this problem trying to get a sample, because I've gone out directly after rainfall and tried to get a sample, and the data we've got back's just showing like, you know, seawater, like nothing there. But I couldn't justify whether I was perfectly over the hole, that, you know, where the flow was and everything was perfect. So having a free diver go down and actually going, oh yeah, there's fresh water coming out here.
Yeah, right.
You know, you'd be able to take a grab sample that you know is going to get you results.
Yep.
So
they're full of like 1 or 2 nannies and big bludgers anyway.
yeah, the inshore ones in the mud, they're absolute havens for gold spot cod. My God, there's so many gold spot. I've dropped GoPros down on them before, and there's footage on YouTube, you know, several guys diving them, and you know, you just see gold spot cod everywhere. And you can actually see them on the sand when you get there. They hug really close to the bottom. So if you see a nice big thick line close to the bottom, sometimes I don't bait jig it because I hope that I'll hook a bait and I'll just get devoured by cod straight away. Cod. But the nannies seem to sit up a bit higher on them, and I find that, and this is a theory from a guy that like sort of he's got a lot of experience with wonky holes, and you know, he's not very well known. He's just a fellow I met through agriculture, and he reckons that the high tide is the ultimate time to fish them, because
why?
The nannies, well, they're a transient fish. They're not a territorial fish like a cod or whatever. So they're not going to be there all the time. They'll be there when it suits them. And he seems to think that he's seen more forage, like they forage around the holes, like where there's like a cluster of them, they'll forage around that area on the high tide. So he thinks that the high tide pushes them inshore, and then as the tide runs out...
That makes no sense though. That's against the fucking...
I know, but I have to say, all of the nannies that I've caught on wonky holes have been
over the high
about
tide.
an hour and a half either side of the top of high.
It's weird that, eh?
Yeah, but that's inshore ones.
Yeah.
Offshore ones, like you never... like
we're talking offshore, how far? Like we're talking like the front of the reef.
Well, when I'm talking about offshore, I'm thinking more about the depth. So wonky's 25 plus metres deep.
Yeah.
So there's... you know, people who've found them in 40 metres. You know, so it just depends on where you are. Like if you go up to Cooktown, a lot of the wonky holes are in sort of 30 sort of metres, whereas as you come in closer, like Babinda, you know, Lucinda sort of area, they're more in that 20 to 25 metre range. You'll find them deeper, but they're more common in that.
Yeah, right.
And it's a different type. Like, you know, there's all... wonkies are completely different. I've got some massive wonky holes that I've rarely ever, like I've only ever caught cod off them, and then I got some really tiny ones in a bit deeper water, like 23, 24 metres, and I've caught more consistent. But you're getting big fish, like you're getting those big
and not
inshore.
heaps, hey, like...
No. You would, like, occasionally you'll get them schooling on there, but I think those inshore ones, from my experience, is more just those solitary big fish that are scavenging. Yeah. And because of that softer sediment around the outside of the hole, like there's a lot of crustaceans and stuff around them. Like the trawlers now, because they know where they are, I've been sitting on one before and seen a trawler about 20 to 30 metres away from me just doing laps around it because the prawns school up around it. Yeah. And a lot of the time I've actually, when I've hooked nannies, you know, some of them have spewed up, you know, once you get them up. And I've had mantis shrimp and like big banana prawns and all sorts of stuff come out. Yeah, right. And it's interesting. So they must be foraging around there for crustaceans, because that's a really, you know, primary part of that food for nanny guy. I think they eat a lot of crustaceans. It's probably why they taste so good.
They fucking do taste good too.
Yeah.
Actually, let's go ikijime.
Yes.
Let's have a piss break and let's talk ikijime.